Welcome back to the table, friends. I am your humble host, Gray DM, and with me, as always, is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
Hello.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight, we gather around the table to answer the questions, who are the Tremere, and why should you drink that bottle of red viscous liquid they just gave you?
So delicious.
Well, today we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to have Owen spearhead this one, and he's going to tell you about the spooky magic boys.
Spooky magic boys. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good.
So start.
Yeah. So we're going to start with the Tremere. They would be what you would call mages, magicians in the world of vampires and their lore.
Vampire mages, but not mages.
Yes,
mages.
Not mages. These are vampire mages. There's a significant difference. But they were not always so. At one time, they were mages. And they were led by a man. Can you guess what his name might have been?
Bob
Tremere. Yes.
Nailed it.
Yes.
Nailed it on
Good
the first
job.
one.
Good job, Gray. You got that. But yes, Tremere. He was basically the founder of a particular order of mages, the Order of Hermes. They themselves were part of what was called the Pillars of the Traditions. The Pillars of the Traditions were a group of basically 9 mystic traditions that existed in the Dark Ages, each devoting themselves to a different type of magic. The Order of Hermes themselves were kind of the alchemists of their time. They prided themselves on, formula and potion and elixir. And one major component of their magic was longevity. They were able to basically make themselves immortal. Not immortal as like vampires immortal, but human immortals, able to practice their magical abilities and do wonderful, crazy things. However, for a while, this worked, but at some point, Tremere noticed that immortality wasn't always lasting. It wasn't quite as potent as it used to be. So he started looking for alternatives as the magic of their chantry, their cabal, whatever you want to call it, was beginning to wane. So he searched for other means of immortality that he could use, and he happened to find vampires. Vampires are immortal. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
You didn't know that. Well, they are. Vampires are immortal. So when he was, facing this possibility of just losing everything he had, he undertook a lot of experiments, and he went to some of his other people that were in his chantry and, sought advice, see if anybody else could figure it out. And he had this apprentice of his named Goratrix. Okay. And Goratrix, he had been investigating vampires. And he and 6 of Tremere's advisors all underwent a ritual. This ritual is called the Ritual of Amaranth. And Amaranth is another word for
A streamer who likes to hang out in bikinis.
Hey, you know what? That is true. It's spelled a little differently, but yeah. The Ritual of Amaranth is actually another term for deodorization.
Yeah, that's just about to say. It's also interesting because Hermes, not to check it, I had to look it up to confirm, because Hermes is used a lot in medicine and stuff like that. But he's not a patron god of that, but he is a patron god of the boundary between life and death.
Yes.
Which makes perfect sense for them to be the Order of Hermes then.
Yeah, and this Order of Hermes is actually a thing that existed in real life.
Oh, yeah?
Not to the extent that the people actually had magical abilities and things like that.
No.
But it was, you're going to have to give me a second to look at my notes here.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Hold on, I can find that. I have that piece of information somewhere tucked away. Yeah, because I know like the isn't the medical symbol the staff of Hermes?
Yes.
The wings. That's why the wings are in there.
Yes, I actually think that there's two different staffs. There's the one with the wings and there's the one with the snake.
Yeah. Okay.
And people smarter than me could tell you the difference.
Yeah, there's probably somebody, some nurse somewhere that's just basically like, you guys are wrong.
Yeah, in reality, it's called Hermeticism. And it was more of a philosophy. But I mean, people kind of considered it magic because they were doing things that others didn't really understand. But in reality, it's just, medicine.
I think all philosophers have dabbled with a little bit of medicine. They're like, hey, you know what? There's a really good cure for those philosophical woes. Hemlock. Why don't you drink some of that?
Yeah, but apparently there was a book that was written. The first book of Hermeticism was written by the god Hermes Trismegistus. Yes, I actually had to look up how to pronounce that.
Nice.
But they say that it's a god who is a combination of the aspect of Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. But yeah, there you go. A little history lesson for you that probably is only partially correct.
The best kind of correct.
Technically correct. But yeah, so basically at the end of the first millennium, all this stuff's going on. They're losing their powers and they need to figure out a way to, make themselves immortal again. So Goratrix, he presents this ritual of Amaranth to Tremere. Says like, hey, this is going to do it. This is going to make us immortal. We are going to be able to keep our magic powers and we're also going to be immortal. Isn't that awesome? And Tremere said, hey, cool. Yeah, let's do this. Yep. So the group of them, including another one of Tremere's apprentices named Etrius, all join in on this ritual and they perform it. And basically what they do is they take two fledgling vampires who were apprentices to Goratrix that he had embraced by a Tzimisce named Robert. Yeah, Robert. Pretty normal name for
it's Bob. Bob is the source of the Tremere. We found it. Guys.
But yeah, so basically they perform this ritual. The two apprentices, the description says they're consumed, but I don't think they mean consumed in the carnal, voracious eating way. It just means like their essence, their vitae, whatever is consumed. And all of the participants in this ritual fall unconscious. Sometime later, they wake up and they're like, hey, awesome. We're vampires now. We're immortal. I'm going to do this wicked magical. My magic doesn't work.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Oh, no. Turns out the ritual only partially worked. Yeah. And there's arguments about this on whether Goratrix knew this was going to happen or if he had no idea. I mean, you'd think if you're going to do something that would give you immortality, you'd hit every note on that test, so like, let's make sure I'm immortal. Let's make sure the reason I want to be immortal, this magic stuff still works, but
checkbox can do magic.
So that's what gave Goratrix the moniker of the betrayer.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
We have a betrayer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what happens when you get a little reckless and you kind of just jump the gun on things like this.
That's how I live my life.
That's how you live your life. So basically, time went on. Tremere and his friends, not wanting to give up on what they had, started researching ways to get their magical abilities back. And they found that their standard way of doing it just was not working anymore. So instead, they eventually developed something called thaumaturgy or blood magic.
Go figure.
Yeah. So
Let's turn to the blood.
Yeah. So depending upon which version of vampire that you're looking at, thaumaturgy is many things. Some people considered it one of the worst disciplines early on because it really didn't do a whole lot when it came to game mechanics. Like it had some neat abilities and stuff like that, but it didn't let you do like crazy powerful stuff. But as time has gone on, they've created, new abilities. They've created rituals that they can perform that, might be slower, take time, might require resources, but have like a grand scale to what they're capable of doing. But it's basically magic, and it's magic vampires can perform, and it's magic that's based in blood. So a lot of the things that they can do have to do with blood and what blood means. It's iconography when it comes to humans and vampires alike. So it can do things like trace people. It can do things like cause your blood to boil and suddenly die. But it can do like anything that's kind of in between that as well. So there's a lot of, really deep stuff that you can do with it, but it really depends what version of vampire that you're looking at. In current 5th edition, I believe they just released a book that carries a lot of the spells.
Yes. Let's see. There's Cult of the Blood Gods. We have that one. And there's I feel like I can see the cover, the kind of slightly awkward shot of the dude screaming wearing contacts.
Wearing contacts?
Yeah, it's like pretty clear he's wearing contacts. But yes, I heard that there was a bunch of more rituals, like it was either collection and they added a bunch of new rituals in there too. For a step back moment, like if you think of things like, think of a system like D&D, like magic is so ubiquitous in D&D because essentially if you give magic to a class or some of the people, like it's not just like, oh, hey, what's your ability? My ability is to like swing the sword. What's your ability? My ability is a billion fucking magic spells that I have access to. So like, I know the editions have been a little bit different with the way they handle that because I think in starting and stuff, Tremere were like the only ones who could do it. But it's like having 3/4 of the book dedicated to you. I know in Requiem, if we remember, magic was a part of the various different ideological factions.
Yes.
So they are the ones that gave it to you, not your bloodline.
Right.
But of course, we've returned back to 5th edition. And so we got to dive into where it comes from. And I think Tremere are like at least definitely the ones that start up the most.
Right. There are other groups, other clans that do it. There's offshoots of Tremere as well that have blood sorcery abilities. But it's one of those things where it's like, when you have an entire book dedicated to supernatural creatures that all have abilities that appear to be magical, and then you also add magic vampires, like it gets a little mixed up, a little stirred up inside there.
And then blood alchemy on top of it.
Yes, and blood alchemy on top of that. So, I mean, there's a lot going on there. I mean, I feel that it kind of becomes a discussion between you and your DM, whoever's leading the game, that what you can and can't do, and maybe if you want to flavor things yourself, that's something you can do. But like we said, there's books now that are dedicated to just what blood sorcery can do. So that's something that's very interesting. I unfortunately have not looked at that book.
So we must bring the great bookshelf, summon it. Start looking through those books again.
All right, another discipline that the Tremere get, and this will sound familiar if you listen to our last podcast, is the ability of dominate.
Go figure.
Yeah.
That mages might want to tell people to do things.
Yeah. And a lot of the reason behind this is because, I mean, they're mages. They know what's right, what's wrong, and what you should be doing, and what you should be doing with your time, and how you should do it. And hey, get into that room over there, and don't mind that I'm locking the door behind you and pulling a lever.
Those are just fancy pictures on the ground.
Those are just fancy. Don't mind that they're glowing now that you're standing on top of them. That burning sensation is completely normal. Don't worry about it. Your skin will grow back. It's okay. But yeah, I'm not going to go over them again, but dominate is basically you dominate a person. You can control what they think. You can control what they do. You can make them do things. You can make them say things. You can make them go places. You can wipe out their entire memories and create new ones. So there's a lot going on there. And it depends on what kind of, Tremere you want to be as well. If you want to go that route, if you want to focus more on blood sorcery, because that's the big thing. We kind of didn't get into it in the Ventru game, but if you're just starting out a game and you're hearing all these awesome abilities that you can do, it takes time.
It's going to be a while.
Yeah. The really strong vampires that have all of these disciplines at like high levels are supposed to be hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
You depending upon your game, you might only play it, for a couple months. And unless you're doing gigantic time skips, it doesn't make sense that you become ultra powerful.
Yeah. And also, exactly. I think these high level abilities too, when you look at them as a gamer, you have a kind of a predisposition to look at them and be like, oh man, I can't wait till I get that.
Mm-hmm. You might never get to it.
You might never get them. And also in the world of like vampire, these are also kind of like touchstones that most vampires don't really know about. They could kind of think, well, if I practice this discipline enough, I might someday get to a point where these things are possible.
Mm-hmm. But
they really should be kind of used for these showstopper things. Like when a bunch of Thin Bloods go rushing the sheriff, and like he walks out and he looks like he's covered in marble, and he just starts tanking Molotov cocktails, and you're like, oh,
fire's supposed to burn these guys, isn't it?
He's still pissed.
It doesn't look like it hurts at all. So yeah, that's another one of their abilities. Then you have, where was I? Let me get back to my notes. Auspex. So this is going to be a new one, and it makes really good sense for a mage vampire. Auspex is basically the ability to detect emotions, intentions. You can see auras of people. Basically, is the thing that lets you see the unseen.
Peer behind the veil.
Yeah, basically. You really think, if you're someone that's dedicated your unlife to, searching out the new, the unknown, the mystic, whatever, like this is a good ability to have. And it also lets you see things that people don't want you to see, because as we'll find out later on, there's particular vampires that are very good at making themselves difficult to perceive, making others difficult to perceive, and making things and places difficult to perceive. So Auspex kind of gives you that ability to, really dig in and find what people don't want you to find. And that's fun.
It's fun. I was just thinking, this thought crossed my mind, this break our stream of thought slightly. I apologize for that. I don't think I've ever used Auspex the way I really think you should use it.
How's that?
At least once, which is to basically pull the Cthulian thing. Like if someone at the table gets Auspex enough, you just start describing things only to them that freak the entire party out. Like, oh, by the way, you see this. Did you realize that all those buildings are covered in spiders and they're all watching you everywhere you go? And everybody's like, wait, what do you mean? Like, there are spiders everywhere. Like, well, there's no spiders over there. Oh, you want to use Auspex again?
You happen to see a guy walking in an alleyway and he looks kind of like a bum, kind of scruffy, gruffy, but his shadow is a gigantic standing werewolf. It's kind of weird. And the spiders are skittering away from him.
That would be a great way to play a Malkavian, is literally drive the player insane. Handing them cards of information.
Oh yeah.
Little drawings and snippets that you've developed.
And it's all stuff that they can't even interact with. It's just shit that's happening, Like as you're walking, something jumps out of a corner and just its mammoth mouth just closes on the person standing in front of you, and you're freaking the fuck out. But the person just keeps walking, and the creature just kind of sits there and is pissed off and just skitters away.
That'd be a great use for like Chat GPT generation stuff. Just like handing them little pictures, texting them images. Yeah. So they're like, "What is this?" Like that's sitting in the corner of the coffee house.
Oh yeah.
Why?
That's good. I like that.
Interesting.
Add that to the list.
Make a note.
All right. So yeah, those are some of the abilities. I didn't go into really great detail on it because, there's so many different ways that the abilities can be used. There's a lot of looseness in Vampire where things can be interpreted however the DM really decides to be. So you can use those things how you like. So the Tremere themselves have a hierarchy, you could say. It's in here.
Is there like
here it is.
a geometric way to explain?
Let me see. I guess if I was to pick a shape, it would be a 4-sided triangle with a point at the top. Almost a pyramid.
It's a word for that.
So yes, the Tremere have a pyramid. Literally, that is their hierarchical structure, is the pyramid. And it basically focuses all power to the top. And they are considered one of, if not the most structured clans out of all of the clans. And that is by design. You put a bunch of academics together and they're basically going to create a structure where there's no real question on who's at the top and who's at the bottom.
It's funny that like the only people that could out-venture the venture are the academics.
Yeah.
And like, no, I have 15 sub-steps to that process.
Yeah. And basically that structure itself, at the very top, you have the Primus. He basically is the highest ranking member of House Tremere. He's the leader of the clan. And he holds supreme authority in guiding the clan's overall direction and goals. They make all the decisions regarding clan affairs and represent the house in external matters. So, I mean, if you're going to say like dictator, that's the dictator. He's dictating down, what he wants and what's going on. At one point in time, that was a guy named Tremere. And so here's some fun stuff, because there's some questions. So Tremere is not considered an antediluvian. He is not one of these original clans.
Did not exist before the flood.
Correct. And there's a question. So if you're looking at antediluvians are technically third generation, correct? Well, because only antediluvians existed as the highest pinnacle aside from Cain at the time of this ritual, the neonates that were used for the ritual were maybe 4th generation, maybe 5th generation. So when it comes to diablerie, you're generally diablerizing someone stronger than yourself. And again, I think this is something that changes between different books, but I remember at one point in time, it was if you were, say, a 5th generation, diablerize a 4th generation, that technically brings you up to a 4th generation, or at least your blood potency is that of a 4th generation at that point.
Masquerade still holds most of that true.
Okay. So in reality, if Tremere and his group diablerize these neonates, at most they're 4th generation, but more than likely they're probably 5th generation. So they're not, as high end at that point as other vampires are. But you could say that at one point in time, we're not really sure why he decided to do this. Tremere got this idea of maybe devouring an antediluvian.
Gee, what a lark.
Yeah. So
in the many, many times that's occurred across the story, nothing has ever gone bad.
No, never. It's always worked out for the best.
Yes.
So you have this vampire antediluvian named Salat. And he is the basically leader, beginning point of, wow. Salubri. Yeah, Salubri. Which are basically, I don't want to say they're good vampires. I mean, you can't really say there's such a thing as a good vampire. But they basically focus more on healing, spiritual enlightenment. They are known for having a third eye. So in, history and lore, the third eye, those people might be vampires. So, Salat, he was considered a man of great wisdom. Well, we don't know if it was a he or she in all technicalities. They were a figure of great wisdom, compassion, and Tremere thought they looked delicious. We're not entirely sure why Tremere did this. There's thoughts that they saw the Salubri as competition or threat to their own existence, the things that they were trying to accomplish. But in the long run, he got chomped, and Tremere ate him. And there was much rejoicing
within the clan. Yay.
Right. We do know that after this happened, it sounds like Tremere used his connections and basically convinced everyone that the Salubri were Diablers themselves, infernalists. They made pacts with demons. So they're actually hunted down by the other clans and killed to near extinction. I believe in the current version of Masquerade, they still exist, but they're considered an ultra rarity.
Yeah, I think they're on one of our very last visits on the list.
Yes.
The clans who have faded or are lost.
Yes. But what all this means is, well, one thing that the Salubri were kind of known for was a bit of foresight, a bit of visionary. And some say that Salat knew this was happening. He knew it was coming, and he prepared. And when Tremere devoured his soul, maybe he didn't. Maybe the two souls existed within one form for a while. And there was a battle. And maybe at one point, one of them finally won. We're not sure which one won, but there was talk of Tremere's apprentice, Etrius, who basically kind of became the de facto leader of the Tremere after Tremere seemed to fall into some type of state after his devouring of Salat. And Etrius mentioned every once in a while he sees a third eye on Tremere's forehead. Ooh, scary. But as time went on, it looks like the battle was fought, and what is stated to maybe have happened is the soul of Tremere left his own body, and he transferred himself into Etrius. And he spent a short time there, and he then took control of Gortrix, who then disappeared.
Interesting.
Yes. The neatest thing that happened was after all of that, Tremere's body turned into a giant worm.
And he became the God Emperor too.
Basically, yes. The spice must flow. And basically, he...
Leave it to the mages to have the most convoluted history.
Yeah, we're still in the, early periods here. Oh my God, where is it? Oh, no. Okay, so basically Tremere's body was in Vienna, the chantry that they had in Vienna. And yeah, and there was a saying at the time that whenever a high-ranking Tremere disappeared, that they went to Vienna. Because, Tremere technically was still alive, and he was locked beneath Vienna somewhere. And as old vampires get old, their tastes get pretty strong. But yeah, so that happened. We'll get back to that shortly, because I was kind of talking about something else, but that you have the Primus at the time. So then you run into the Inner Council of the Seven. So they're beneath the Primus. They're a group of 7 powerful Tremere vampires chosen by the Primus to serve as advisors and leaders within the clan. Each member of the Inner Council of 7 holds significant influence and authority within House Tremere, overseeing specific aspects of clan governance and decision-making. So these are basically the power behind the power, or the power under the power, however you want to say it. They get stuff done. They're the ones that pretty much lay down the law. After that, you have the counselors. They basically are one step below. They assist the Inner Council of 7, carry out their duties. They oversee specific regions of the domain within the clan's territory and act as liaisons between the leadership and the lower-ranking members. After that, you have the advisors. They're trusted members of House Tremere who provide guidance and support in the leadership.
All these can be found at your local community college.
Yes, and they'll give you the wrong answers half the time and ruin your life. The advisors can specialize in a particular area of expertise, such as thaumaturgy, diplomacy, and they can offer their insights to aid the clan. And finally, you have the apprentices. They're at the bottom of the pyramid. They're the foundation that holds the whole thing up. This unbreakable, immovable pyramid, that can never fall.
Never.
But they're mentored by the higher ranking members. They undergo the rigorous instructions of the ways of thaumaturgy and clan traditions. And then it all fell.
It's funny. You build a structure like that, you never think that's ever going to topple, and then some mortals come by and they start thinking that, hey.
So a couple things happen here. So as you have the pyramid, we talked about blood bonding earlier. That was a very, very popular act that happened in the Tremere. This was used as a way to ensure that those below you listen to your instructions, do as you're told, don't screw things up, and just do, what we tell you to. So blood bonding worked its way through the whole pyramid from top to bottom. The issue with that is, well, people in power tend to stay in power, and the people at the bottom tend to stay at the bottom.
Not a lot of upwards momentum.
Yes. There's not much upwards momentum at all. If anything, there's pretty much no momentum, period. So, as we said, Vienna was a major stronghold for the Tremere. And basically, as what happened with the Second Inquisition, they were hunted. And Vienna as the stronghold, as the central pillar of the pyramid, so to speak, even though that's not how pyramids work, fell. A lot of Tremere were destroyed. A lot of Tremere disappeared. No one's really sure what happened to Tremere, the body, the worm, the man, and Tremere, the Gore-Tex.
No.
But basically, the overarching issue here is that the pyramid collapsed. And when the pyramid collapsed, all this rigid structure went with it. What was arguably one of the strongest clans now became one of the weakest. And that's not great. A side effect of that happening is the blood bond that defined that structure was now weakened. And this is the bane that occurred in the Tremere clan, is they are now unable to blood bond other vampires.
Oh.
They can still blood bind mortals.
Yeah, I gotcha. So they can still ghoul and...
Correct. They can still ghoul and do all of that, but they are not able to blood bond other vampires any longer.
Oh, that seems like it has some consequence.
That does seem like has some consequences, and I'm worried about that. Gray likes to twist the knife sometimes.
Yeah, these are interesting. These are interesting things to play around with.
Yeah. Another issue that they came to find is perfectionism, where the Ventru, I guess you call it their vice, is arrogance. For the Tremere, it's perfectionism. They hate to fail. It has a larger effect on them when they do fail. It actually turns into a negative effect in the game itself, where you receive a penalty when particular actions are being repeated that you failed at once already. So it doesn't get easier after you tried it once. It actually gets harder.
It's a frustration of I should have done it the first time. It should have worked the first time. Right. What's going on here? Oh, that's interesting. That is very... It's that academic, fastidious, I did it right the first time. I don't know why I have to do this again. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Another side effect of that collapse is the factions that exist. So now you have 4 main factions. You have House Tremere. This is the most traditional of the houses follows the old structure, the old hierarchy. They're loyal to the Camarilla, and they try to still project that strength that they used to have. But everyone kind of knows that it's been weakened. Next, you have House Karna. And House Karna was created...
Just when I sprung that good name on you guys.
So was that a name that you came up with?
Yes, I took the name from the house. I just made the wrong
last. So you have House Karna, led by Karna. She's the formal, well, I think it's a she. Yes, it is a she. Specifically, it is a she for reasons. But former prince of Marseille and the primogen of the far and exotic Milwaukee.
I have to get over these drab, high culture roots and go to a place where I can get, real salt of true deep understanding of the human experience.
Far and away, Milwaukee. But yeah, House Karna. So they are advocates of, freedom from the traditional blood bond. They also are looking to basically, in the books, they say feminize the Tremere clan. They're trying to make it more of a matriarchy. So, yeah, that's House Karna. Next, you have House Ipsimissus.
Like that's coming back. Like some of this is coming back to me.
Yeah. So this is a branch of the Tremere that basically moved in with the Anarchs. Yeah. So a little different in that they're trying to seek enlightenment and balance in all things, reject the old hierarchical structure of the Tremere clan, and strive for individual freedom and autonomy. That is not something that Tremere strive for.
They're teenagers.
Yeah.
Like they're Tremere.
I'm different.
Dad, you don't understand.
There's no real mentioned leader of this house. It kind of sounds like it's one of those things where, it might change quite often, especially if they're, shacking up with Anarchs. I mean, that probably happens. Finally, you have House Gortrix. So this is a little strange because, Gortrix was a person. He was the betrayer. He might be Tremere. But this house doesn't necessarily have anything to even do with Gortrix, the person. There was a House Gortrix before the fall of Vienna, but this is not that house. So this House Gortrix was previously aligned with the Sabbat, but has since joined the Camarilla. Members of this house tend to embrace darker and more experimental aspects of thaumaturgy, leading to the reputation as eccentrics and sometimes dangerous. These are the guys that everyone thinks they might be dealing with demons.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. I think I reskinned them as the Benya.
Yeah.
I think I redid them as because I put the Russian spin on them, and that was House Gortrix. Yeah,
yep. Yep.
So I was like, where's the...
We're talking about games that...
that was our personal take on it. But yeah, this is the inspiration for that.
But this house is led by Gortrix. So this might be Tremere. There's no real say.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. This is one of those things where lore previously kind of clashes with lore current, so we're not really sure where things diverge and where they mix up. But
it's all myth and legend.
Yes, it's all myth and legend. But yeah, so that's basically my main talking points about the Tremere. Yeah, do you have any questions? Great.
Class dismissed. Everybody out the door. No, I was very enlightening. It's been a long time since I read up on that stuff.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
You see that part? Yeah,
a lot changes between versions, so I tried to kind of hit the big points because there's a lot of people that appear in one edition and then they're completely gone in another.
And then certain editions also introduce, the concept of myth and the unreliable narrator. And then like some editions go back and they're like, oh yeah, we don't really know what happened, but Bob, part of this lineage, did this thing on this date. And you're like, that seems really specific. Did that really occur, or is that just we don't know, but here are the dates and times and places and events? And you're like, Yeah, I while, with previous episodes we've talked about the differences between the different vampire games, Vampire the Masquerade is very geared on you kind of as a storyteller taking some part of this and making it your own.
Yep.
And then using that to influence a lot of the flavor, because you really do want your players to occasionally find those touchstones that call back to some of these old events, whether they be completely recharacterized, such as I did. Like, that's why I figured there'd be a lot of instances where you're like, this doesn't quite make sense, but I recognize some words that he took and then jibbled. And
that was the thing, was reading through a lot of this, and I'm just like, these are all things that Gray talked about, but they don't quite equal what's being said here. And I don't want anyone to take what I'm saying here as you should follow the lore I just laid out what's in the game. No, just go with what's in the book. There's so much that I probably misspoke and done wrong just because I've got so much information in front of me.
And the important thing is that you pick you decide if you like these themes, and then hopefully you do. And if you do like them, then this is what kind of spurs you to create your own stuff. I loved, largely because of your Tremere character in New York, I loved flushing out the Tremere in New York. That was very fun to me. And
it was fun seeing it. Yeah. It's one of the things I kind of feel bad about in that game, because it really looked like a lot of that game was for me.
Well, out of the characters that were created, you were the one who was like, I want to get historical.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff, not only, I mean, it was geared toward your sensibilities, but not only did we become very fond of it, but it kind of trumps official lore, because there is a setting of New York, and the Tremere have a stronghold in one of the boroughs. But how cool was it to have it in a subway station that was abandoned? And that was just awesome, And so at the end of the day, the storyteller is going to dictate the world for their players, and they're going to flavor it according to their tastes.
And that was one of the things that I thought was really neat. So, I mean, you created the chantry that was in New York, which was really cool for our game. I mean, it's nothing to do with that. And you made it kind of a maze to navigate through. That is one of the things that the Tremere chantries do, is they're constantly changing. And one of the things that other vampires find unsettling is that it'll change, but the Tremere will always naturally know the paths and the ways through it, even without knowing that anything changed.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So, like, I took that idea from a large part of it was from Vampire Bloodlines, because if you're a Tremere and you try to go past, or if you're not a Tremere and you try to go see a Primogen without their authorization, you end up basically getting stuck in a looping hallway that you can't get out of. And so, like, I kind of used that idea, but like, obviously they got that idea from the lore. And so, it's fun when you find out you're on the same page as the writers, even if you're not doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was I loved watching, you explore for the first time, but more so, I loved you taking people there and people going, what the hell's going on? And you're like, it's no big deal. We just have to take a right here.
How do you know? I just know.
It's just, this is, you guys should react. Don't worry. Let's sit here. I'm going to go in the back room. You're going to see some weird things, but don't talk about it. Oh, those twin sisters or triplet sisters. Don't worry about it.
Sometimes they're twins, sometimes they're triplets.
It's all different.
So, in your opinion, you asked me the question about Ventrue at the end of the last podcast. What makes a good Tremere character?
I think, my opinion, if you listen to that lore and you listen for the hallmarks, like, Tremere need to be tied to, maybe not directly academia, but it's that little bit of knowledge is power. Knowledge was literally power for them. It was the structure. It was everything.
And structure was power.
because that's to secure knowledge, to build it, you have to lock it in place into systems and into control. And then luckily in V5, you were playing a place where that system blew up.
Right.
So I think that you can kind of take the best of both worlds, where you can take the old Requiem thing where like rituals may have been lost to the whims, and you're going around trying to find and research and pick those things up. But also, you can also have that there are these little pockets that have maintained a large portion of their power, and some of them will tend towards structure, and some of them will tend towards ideology. And that's a really fun thing. Like, Tremere, if you're going to make a Tremere character, you're going to pick, do I want to play Harry Potter?
Right.
Do I want to like dark Harry Potter? Do I want to play Indiana Jones?
Harry Potter.
Just Harry Potter.
But no, I mean, that is very cool. I mean, making the 4 different houses, they really kind of give you a way to play the character the way you want to play it. Yeah. You don't have to be the academic. You can kind of be the wild child going with the Anarch version. You can play the dominatrix if you want, the crazy witch, if you want to do that, you have those options. They're all there. And I think it's very fun. I enjoy playing a Tremere. I can't wait to get back to it.
Yes. Someday when we feel like, you've had your time to explore a little bit, we've got other people up to par. Yeah, I would love. Well, I mean, some people have to learn how to build characters that they can inhabit.
Yes.
To a point, I really, when I was working on the notes and stuff for that game, and I was building out the backstory and stuff, it's kind of funny that we brought up Harry Potter, because I think, if I remember correctly, my Russian take on the Goratrix, I kept thinking of the Harry Potter movie where the other schools come, and there was like those Russian, and I always kept thinking, wouldn't it be so cool? Like, they're these like cold, stout, and like they just have this different kind of that weird thing that happens when you kind of deal with like Russian mobsters and stuff, where there's that alien part of it because of our culture differences, and like the tattoos and like that seems like a cool, and those movies that we used to watch from the guy who got us in here, like I think it was Day Watch and Night Watch, where it's like the Russian, like all that stuff mixed into like a family. Oh, that was cool. I would love if someone at our table tends to go Tremere again, like I might take him aside and be like, "Oh man, here's just some stuff. Like, if you think this is cool, I will run this stuff into the game." But I really like that slant on it too, where like everybody's like, "Well, what's so dangerous about them?" It's like they might be just straight up dealing with demons.
Yeah,
like we don't know.
They literally might be possessed.
Yeah, like what is up with that stuff? I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, hey, spooky Harry Potter.
Yeah,
like you said, just Harry Potter.
I like to say there was no aspect of Harry Potter for games.
No, I really loved. I really loved the thing we made. I think we both do.
Yeah,
I like those characters, and unlike some of the other stuff where we call back to things that we did because it makes us happy to think back and stuff, like that stuff I think stands on its own enough that I never want to see it go away. Like if for the rest of my life, if we play vampire games, I will always tend to throwing out something about like, oh man, the fall of the New York Chantry. Like they just, we're like the specific bloodlines of like everybody's trying to figure out where what's her face went because she was such a cornerstone of like
right.
Yeah. So that's why I think the Tremere has earned a place in both of our cold dead hearts.
I mean, the part that I really enjoyed about it was the character himself was like a very upper class, maybe not old money, but, mature money, businessman. And you have this guy, this ultra conservative, older guy. And then you have his penthouse, and it's this beautiful penthouse. And then in the back, he has the room with all the candles, the cape, the altar, all the things that everybody's just like, we know these, rich ultra, 1%ers are out there sacrificing babies and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, well, he's not sacrificing babies, but he's definitely wearing a cape while doing something horrible.
It's the epitome of the epitome of a rich secret society.
Yes. The Illuminati, aspect.
And then just throwing in ties to, the ties to like the Salubri and like the seeing the future stuff,
right?
And, like the Italy ties to Vienna, and then throwing in like the alternative of like, oh, at some point in time, the Chantry was actually, you know, the big botanical gardens, and like it was a very magical kind of. It's like that thing where when sometimes at a table, one of the cornerstones dominates.
Yeah.
And you can only wish to achieve that with multiple people right. Because that level of a game is what we all aspire to. Well, we can literally gush about this for hours at a time, but I don't think we should actually.
No, we're just rambling at this point.
Yeah. So any parting advice to would-be spell slinger blood casters out there?
Do it. Have fun with it. That's all I can really say. If you think you're the type of person that you don't necessarily have to be outgoing, but you're going to have to be a bit of a charismatic character when you play, do it. Just have fun with it. It's a different flavor of Ventru. Like I kind of like hurt saying that, but it really is a different flavor of Ventru. There's still, you know, depending upon which house you want to get into, there's still kind of, you know, like you should listen to us, we're important sort of thing, but just in a different way.
I very much see that, like, you know, you cross a Ventru and you might lose all your finances and be thrown and cast away. You cross a Tremere and you might be reprogrammed. You know,
and your whole family might be turned into something too. You know, like, you don't know.
What happened? I don't ever remember the Johnsons.
You have very interesting blood. Those are like pretty much the worst things that you could hear.
Oh no, I'm in danger. I need an adult.
I'm an adult.
All right, guys. I'll see you next time.
Yep. Bye-bye.